are fighting a battle. We're singing the same song, trying to find someone who cares as much as we do. We're climbing the ladder while we're sinking in this boat, trying to find someone who cares.
Hello and welcome back to Oh Babble Scribbler, the podcast show about NLP, its fandom and the denizens thereof. I am joined today by Goombasa.
Hello everybody.
Goombasa is a long-term collaborator with me. We've worked on many different projects together, such as...
Well, let's see, I've helped out with the editing on No Place Like Home. I am one of the voice actors for the heroic tale of heroically heroic heroes, who hasn't shown up yet. We've worked together. We've worked together on numerous fan fictions together. I Love You, Princess Luna was one. Actually, that was one of the first ones, I believe.
I think it was the very first one. It was also the very first fic that I ever had to take off YouTube because I got a copyright claim.
Yep, and I'm also very proud to say that I am her go-to Flash sentry.
Oh yes, and that is why his very first podcast here, and if you listen to this one, you should go and listen to the other one first. His first podcast with me was about Flash Sentry. But today, we are talking about a very different set of background characters. To be honest, they may not even be cast as background characters in the truest sense anymore. We are going to be talking about Lyra and Bonbon. But in particular, we are talking about a particular fanfiction that came out in November 2011, in the halcyon early days of the fandom. And it is called Happily Ever After by Vanna. And Goombasa, for February's Month of Love, did a reading of this, and so I'm going to leave him to explain what this fic is about and why we're going to be dealing with this one today.
This fan fiction is a romantic slice of life, and also a little bit of comedy. It's a very funny fic about Lyra and Bonbon getting married, and if you've been in the fandom for any amount of time, you've probably noticed that Lyra and Bonbon are a very popular fan pairing. I actually, from a lot of the fan works that I've seen, they are often portrayed as a married couple, which you don't see very often in fan fiction, I'm noticing.
Yeah. There may be a sudden influx of them now, so considering recent events in America.
That is true, yes. But the story itself focuses on the trials that the two go through, because in this particular fanfic, Lyra is portrayed as being a minor noble, and the nobility of Canterlot is not happy with her marrying a commoner. So over the course of the story, Lyra and her friends are trying to put together a good wedding for her and Bonbon, while also dealing with a lot of flack that they're getting from very influential and powerful ponies. Yep,
and it incorporates a lot of early fanon that became sort of accepted fanon, because there are some ideas in here that, had they been seen at the very start in November 2011, would have been seen as trend-setting. But now we just kind of accept them. Things like Lyra Bon being an established couple, even if they are about to get married, we don't see the first date, the first kiss. They are established. We also have a range of other background characters. And I'm joined today by Suki, who's maybe snoring in the background. We have things like Berry Punch being the town drunk. We also have an appearance by Carrot Top and Derpy constantly raiding her fridge. And we have Pokey Pierce, who, I don't know. I entered the fandom when he seemed to have fallen out of favour, because I don't see him in much, but he is a major player in this one, isn't he?
He is, yes, and I'm in much the same boat. When I originally read this fic, in fact, I thought that Pokey was a totally original character, and I didn't put it together until much later that, in fact, yes, he was one of the background characters that just never talked.
Yeah, he was in Apple Bloom's first Focus episode, the name of which escapes me, where she is trying desperately to get a cutie mark and first meets Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle. He is the unicorn who is popping all the balloons in front of Apple Bloom and revealing her to Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. And from that, we have this huge character. I really enjoyed him. I kind of wanted to see more of him. Although, I think there is a sort of sequel, or at least a fic that follows on from this and features him by the same author, isn't there?
I believe so. I'm not sure if it was a sequel or a pseudo-prequel or whatnot, but it follows Pokey as he's going out on adventures all around Equestria. I haven't read it yet, but I do mean to get to it. My to-read list is getting very, very long.
Join the club. You saw that list this morning.
Yes, I did.
You're on that list quite a lot.
Oh, God.
Yep. Well, God's got nothing to do with this. It's all poor planning and bad life choices.
Faust, why must you do this to us?
Okay, right. Happily Ever After then. So, you did a reading of this for Month of Lurv, and it is an incredibly good reading, and people should all go and listen to it, because it is really, really good. And
Thank
it helps
you.
that... Yeah, you're very welcome. It helps that this fic itself is very well written. But the reason that we wanted to tackle this today is not just to look at the fic itself, but also to look at it in the context of post-episode 100 fandom. So we have the episode Slice of Life, which featured heavily the background characters, and this fic, which foregrounded the background characters as well. And that's to see how they stack up against each other, and how early fandom kind of almost predicted some things that would become canonical, and missed the dartboard entirely, and stuck somebody else in the arse for some of these ideas. Pokey Pierce, where have you gone?
In the case of episode 100, I think it's very fair to say that early fandom leading up to it definitely influenced the entire episode. At least with broad strokes, because they keep saying that they're not allowed to read fan fiction and whatnot, but they can still take general ideas that are very heavily portrayed in the fandom.
Yeah, because although they're not allowed to read fan fiction, there is so much fan art, and they are allowed to look at that. I don't know where they stand on fan comics, because it's kind of a cross between the two, but there's enough fan art out there of different fan fictions, and of, like you said, broad brushstrokes fandom ideas, like Lyra and Bonbon being a couple.
Like Derpy and the Doctor, like, what else did we have?
We have Carrot Top and Derpy being friends. We had
And,
Berry Punch carrying around a giant barrel.
And of course, Vinyl and Octavia being roommates.
Yes, and Octavia being British, or as much of an approximation of British as the voice actress could manage.
It sounded fine to my Yankee ears.
I loved listening to that. They're going, yeah, okay, it kind of works. Oh, blast! I haven't finished practicing yet.
Yes.
Yeah, you may be British, you may be turn-of-the-century Mary Poppins British. But, yeah, it was more New England kind of, rather than British. Although I'm probably going to get angry emails off people from New England going, this is not us!
No, I live
I'm not saying
in
that
New
people from New England sound like that either.
I live in New England. It sounded fine to me.
Oh,
Maybe not as New England as from where I'm from, but yeah, I have heard people who talk like that.
That's because you live on an island. You just have your own economy and culture. I'm surprised you even speak English anymore. It's a strange... I don't know. What's the main food source over there?
Probably lobster.
We could just assume that you communicate in random clicks and flips of tails. Moving on then.
Excuse me.
Don't die! I need you!
No,
You're scheduled for 3 more podcasts after this.
Oh, shit.
Right, okay. So, Happily Ever After. Some of the stuff that pops up in this does turn up in Slice of Life, as we've said. Some of it doesn't, and the major one is going to be Lyra Bon as a couple. Because they were heavily into best friends in episode.
I just love the fact that anytime they say best friends in that episode, you can just add with benefits on the end, and it makes perfect sense.
I just love the longing looks they're giving each other. That moment where Bonbon, or Special Agent Sweetie Drops, is about to jump out the window, and she puts her hoof to Lyra's cheek, and Lyra kind of hooks her leg around her. I go,
Yeah.
I've never done that to a best friend. I think they would have got quite the wrong idea if I had.
I remember they teased that whole scene with a still shot from the episode, like a week before the episode was set to air, because we had that 2-week hiatus before episode 100. Yeah. They teased it by putting up an image of the two of them basically decorating the town hall for the wedding and looking at each other and giving those half-lidded bedroom eyes to one another. And there was no context for it. There was no dialogue or anything. It was just a still shot. And I'm like, well, this is suggestive.
And we knew that the episode was going to feature a wedding.
Yes.
So they were surrounded by ribbons, giving each other the half-lidded stare, and we know the word wedding. I did enjoy Cranky Doodle Donkey getting married to Mulia, but I kind of wished it had been a Lyra Bomb wedding.
Yep, and the way that they kept stressing the best friend angle, it was basically the writers, or M.A. Larson specifically, just sort of nudging us on the shoulder saying, sorry, Hasbro's not gonna let gay characters in this show ever.
Which is a shame, because Steven Universe has proven that you can put that in and it's not a big deal.
I do kind of have to wonder if this episode had not been fully completed before the Supreme Court ruling here in the US saying that gay couples could get married and it was completely legal no matter where in the country you were, if that would have altered things a little bit. Maybe not, maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part, but I like to think how real world events could sort of shape things like that.
I think that the juggernaut that is Hasbro's marketing machine would have prohibited that. The same way that Disney has always... It's a shame, but Disney has always said, no, we have absolutely no gay characters. When Disney has the most power ever to promote a positive image in children's programming.
Bullshit, they don't have gay characters. They made Captain Hook.
I was thinking more along the lines of the two aliens in Lilo and Stitch the series.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And they seem to be a functioning couple. I can't even remember their names, but I remember that they act like a married couple, and they're both male.
Yes, this is true, yes.
So, yeah, it's... Plus Miss Finster. Everybody loves Miss Finster. I think that Hasbro would not have allowed a gay marriage to have featured heavily in one of their flagship programmings, which is a sad indictment of Hasbro themselves. Maybe I'm wrong, but considering their ethos on a lot of the stuff that the fandom has produced, and just in general, it seems to be very much... how can I put this without being really, really offensive? They target a very, very particular demographic, and if everybody else likes it as well, that's hunky-dory, but that's not really who they're aiming for. That
is true, yes. I always view MLP now, it's more a family show that just happens to have an... Bleh.
You saw that sentence again?
I speak good English.
Which way to the rabbits, George?
I always viewed MLP as more of a family show that just happens to have a strong emphasis on aiming for a young female demographic, because it is the type of show that anybody can watch and enjoy, even if you don't have a young girl in the family.
Although there is still a lot of backlash towards that. It seems to be that it's much more acceptable to say that you're into something like Steven Universe than you are into MLP, even though they share a lot of the same kind of humour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. Although Steven Universe is awesome stuff. And maybe, I like to think that because some of the things in Steven Universe that came out during the Season 1 finale, they have broken a lot of barriers in children's programming. If only because the reception to them was so positive, and the target demographic genuinely did not give a monkeys. They weren't scarred, they weren't traumatized, they weren't made magically gay. It was all fine, and all the people who had always said, no, we mustn't put gay characters in cartoons because it'll corrupt the youth, or they're not old enough to deal with that, they basically went, is it interesting? Yes. Do the good guys win? Yes. Is it awesome fight scenes? Yes. Don't give a monkeys then.
I mean, I've always been an advocate for introducing children to this sort of thing younger, because if you frame it in a way that doesn't demonize them or overly emphasize it, the way that's... if you do it the way Steven Universe did, it's going to work just fine for younger audiences, let's put it that way.
Yeah, they just kind of accepted it as not being weird. I think that this is one of the things that is unfortunate about storylines that feature gay characters, is they tend to be gay storylines. So the storyline will always be about the character being gay, as opposed to it's a storyline and the character happens to be gay. which is where
Yeah.
Steven Universe has changed things. That the characters happen to be in a relationship. That's not actually what the story is about.
We seem to have wandered to a different topic entirely, haven't we?
Well, we're still going to boomerang back to this, because it is Lyra and Bonbon in this fic.
Yes.
It's just kind of accepted, and as is the way with a lot of MLP fiction, it is just accepted that gay and lesbian characters exist in this universe and have equal rights. Because nobody bats an eyelid about Lyra and Bonbon getting married, really. It's more to do with their social status than the fact they're both bears. Mares, not bears.
Bears means something entirely different in that context. But I find it very interesting because I think one of the reasons why there are so many gay and lesbian ships in the MLP universe, at least in fan fiction, is because pretty much the entire cast is female, with a few minor male characters here and there. I mean, you see a lot more lesbian ships than you do of gays.
Yeah, and I noticed this. It's tipped completely in the opposite direction from any other fandom I've ever been in. Because I've been in lots and lots of different fandoms, in video games, comics, anime, cartoons, live action, and across the board, it tends to skew in the direction of, male characters or heterosexual. It's very rare to actually find a lot of femslash. The first time I ever came across it was when I went into the comic book fandoms. When I got into X-Men or Batman, it appeared there. It was the first time I'd ever properly come across it. And then suddenly you get to NLP fandom, and it's the predominant trope. I think, like you said, it's a lot to do with the cast is mostly female, and a lot of the background characters are female as well. And there aren't many prominent male characters in the show. There's Big Mac.
There's Spike, though really how prominent he is sort of fluctuates depending on the writer.
Plus, he tends to be treated as one of the girls, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's always hanging out with them, and the way that he acts, like the episode where he tries to go on the dragon migration sort of tried to highlight how feminine he was compared to the other dragons. I don't know if feminine is the way to put it, but it definitely set up that there was a big barrier between him and his own kind.
Yeah, and things like when they went to the spa day, and you had, what's his name? Not Snowflake, Bulk Biceps, bursting through the wall and taking Spike away. And
Which was a fantastic moment, by the way.
Oh, it is. Let's get going! Pum, pum, pum. I hate when he does that.
Does that? Yes.
Yeah, Bulk Biceps for the win. Actually, he's one of the prominent male characters.
At this point, yeah, ever since they actually gave him a speaking role back in season 4, he was basically elevated from a gag to a full-on character.
Yep, and he's been gradually growing and growing ever since. But the episode 100 gave us some male characters with actual speaking roles and personalities, but we hadn't previously had much of that in the show. We'd had one-off characters like Trenderhoof and Brayburn, but they hadn't...
And Blue Blood. Don't forget about Blue Blood.
Who could forget about Blue Blood? But, lost my thread now, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah. But we hadn't had many male characters who we could actually use as characters. It tended to be that they were background rigs that had been given personalities and voices and backstories and names by the fandom. And then now, those who are entering the fandom now have a much wider selection to choose from. Whereas in November 2011, when this fic came out, it was very limited.
I think a lot of the fandom-made pairings were really just starting to get off the ground at this point. Like, when did Allegrezza come out?
I will find out, but I don't think it was too long after this.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that was like... Was it Allegrezza or University Days that was the really big Octoscratch sort of... They
were both the first two big Octoscratches. I think Allegrezza came out 5th of November 2011.
And by the way, Present Perfect, that is a perfectly fine ship.
It is! Octoscratch is a good ship. On the good ship, Octoscratch. When, I don't know, chicks go and hatchety hatch. I don't know. I'd be shit in a rap battle.
Yeah. Probably.
Not probably, I would be shit. I've just tried to wrap Octoscratch with Hatchety Hatch. Right. 3rd of November 2011, Happily Ever After came out. And 5th of November 2011, Allegrezza started. And Vinyl Octavia University Days started in 7th of April 2012. So Allegrezza came first. And Allegrezza did actually feature in it Lyrabon as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, this was around the time, late 2011, early 2012, was when these fandom pairings were just starting. And they gradually became entrenched in the fandom's consciousness, and now they're kind of the go-to. It's almost odd now to find Lyra without Bonbon or Bonbon without Lyra, which is why when Astrobrony and I were looking at anthropology, it struck me as very dissonant in my mind that I couldn't really reconcile Lyra and Bonbon as being just friends, even though that's a perfectly reasonable way of doing it, and as the show has said, they're best friends. It's good to have a best friend.
I will also say there are certain times where I thought it was more appropriate for established pairings to not be together, or established fandom pairings. Like, I think we brought this up during our discussion of Puppet to Her Fame, that Octavia should have ended up with Lyra in that fic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the writing style or the story that's created. Black and White had one where Lyra and Octavia very nearly ended up together, and because of the way that was written, it was very well done, and I could buy them as a couple. Link in the Dooblydoo. There have been different couples along the way. I know that there is a really well written fic out there that is Vinyl Rarity, which actually,
really?
I think it's called Sea White. I'll find that one out.
I'll have to add that to my queue, because I just added one that was Spike Vinyl that I have to get to, too.
Oh. Well, yeah, we've got Sea White, which is Vinyl Rarity. That's quite a long one. It's nearly 11,000 words. And that's from 2013. So, and in that one, it's very well written, because you can buy them as a couple. And Octavia's there, but at no point did I think, no, she must be with Octavia, even though I love them. So, I think it does depend on writing style and things. No, not in Fart Noise. In Happily Ever After by Vanna, Lyra Bon is an established couple, but they're also a believable couple. They're not just together because the plot says so. They do go through trials and tribulations, and I buy them as being in a relationship.
Yep, and the fact that this takes place on the eve, the very first chapter establishes that Lyra is just proposing to Bonbon, so they have been together for a while now, and just the way that they interact, the way that they talk to one another, I love the way that they do that, because you can tell that they know each other really well. They know each other's quirks. They know the way that each of them acts. So the dialogue between them, and the dialogue between a lot of characters in this fic, it feels very, very natural. Not just between Lyra and Bonbon, but like when Lyra is talking to Pokey Pierce, who is one of her best friends in this fic, it just feels like the two of them have known each other for a very long time.
And the author's skill, Vanna's skill in this is extraordinary, because you cannot... He or she doesn't have to spell out everything about these characters and their relationships. We understand that there is history behind them, but at no point did I feel like I should be asking for more answers. Even though it would have been nice, I knew enough to understand and to appreciate what was going on. I never felt wanting. That brings us into things like Pinkie Pie she's quite a prominent character in this, and she's one of the only main characters of the show, she and Rarity, who do feature at any huge amount. Otherwise, it is all background characters. How do we feel that Pinkie and Rarity were represented then?
I thought that they were represented very well in that they did what they had to do. They had some very nice moments through the story, but they weren't there just to have a main character in the story, or a main character from the show in the story. They played their parts really well, and their inclusion made a lot of sense, because later on in the story, they get to talking about how they can establish a new business in town to sort of circumvent the nobles' wrath about sort of not supporting the local economy. And Rarity and Pinkie Pie are the two that bring up the idea of starting their own business, which I think makes sense, because both of them are ponies with a lot of business experience.
And I like the fact that, well, this is again, it's a harken back to Slice of Life. Pinkie Pie is a wedding planner in this. She is Lyra and Bonbon's wedding planner. And
Only because she forced herself on them. I want to point that out, too.
Yeah, she does a good job of it, though, doesn't she?
Oh, yes, she does. But, like, the two are very, very hesitant, which, once again, is a great moment in this fic, when Pinkie is trying, practically begging them to let her be the wedding planner, and she wants to make it this really big, grand event when the two of them are really trying to do something a little bit more low-key.
You're right this way, Top.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Did I disturb Suki?
She's there going, oh, I'm going to rub my nose now. Yep, I like to think that that's what happened to Mulia as well. She and Cranky were going to just do the wedding themselves, and Pinkie Pie appeared in the living room and went, no, you're not, I'm going to do it! Except that she was then fighting a giant bugbear.
Yes.
And we had Amethyst Star instead, who unfortunately is not in Happily Ever After, and after her one scene in Slice of Life was not in Slice of Life either.
I kind of get the feeling that there was supposed to be more with her, but like due to Hasbro saying no, put more brony things in here, that her scenes kind of got cut.
Yeah, from what I understand, there were scenes involving her and there were scenes involving Time Turner that were cut. Like, he refers to a traumatic experience in his childhood. It was meant to be to do with bowling, and that's why he reacts so badly to the bowling alley.
Right.
And there were some scenes with Amethyst Star at the church trying to get things, at the town hall trying to get things ready. So there were some things that were missed out, but thankfully, thanks to the wonders of fanfiction, Vanna had a chance to expand upon these, and thus we get such wonderful scenes and concepts and ideas as they are no longer allowed to use the town hall to get married in, so they have to get their own church. They have no minister because things have been manipulated away from that. So now we have Reverend Berry Punch.
I loved that scene so much.
I love all the scenes
Berry
with
Punch.
Berry Punch. She was so well
Berry
written.
Punch. Yeah, she's a great character in this. Like, she's the town drunk, but she's a fun drunk. And by the end of the story, she does start taking her duties as a minister very seriously.
She does, and she realises that she's actually very good at it, and she enjoys it, and she makes ponies happy. The bit where she... with spoilers for this, the bit where she marries the two hench ponies. And they don't realise they've been... She goes, do you? Do I what? Just say yes. Do you? Yes. Oh, right, off you go, start your new life together. Did we just get married? And then they kiss!
Yes! Oh,
I love
God.
that.
It was fantastic. And that really says a lot about Vanner's comedic timing. Because a lot of people who try to do comedy the same way that the show does, they overwrite it. Because they're trying to describe everything that happens. In this, the humor is very quick, and it works really well.
Yeah. Vanna doesn't fall into the trap of trying to describe visual gags, which never works. We had this discussion in Heroic Review for Head in the Clouds, which I'll leave a link in the Dooblydoo, go and listen to that, because we have a very in-depth discussion about how to write farce and the nature of comedy in fiction. So we're not going to discuss that here, because Brain by Saucepans would kill us. He got very, very zealous about that. Mm-hmm. But Vanna manages to be, like you said, very quick-witted, very clever, and yet doesn't over-egg the pudding by trying to describe something that is not visual. Because you can't treat visual comedy as just, it's going to be exactly as funny if you write about it. And he gets that, which is amazing and very, very welcome. Because it means that we get wonderful moments like Berry Punch marrying two hench ponies, or, and major spoilers, the fake wedding.
Yes, the fake wedding with Pokey Pierce in drag. And just how casual he is about it is very, very funny.
Do you want to explain this scene so anybody listening going, what? You need to go and listen to this reading, guys, because now he's going to spoil it.
Yes, please do so.
So I want to explain the context of the scene?
Get my view counts up. But the idea behind the scene is in the last chapter, basically a very powerful noble is coming to basically exert his authority to say this wedding is not happening. And apparently, by equestrian law, he has the ability to do this. So in order to circumvent that, they get Pokey Pierce to dress up in drag, dye parts of his coat green so that he looks like Lyra, and stand at the altar with Bonbon to basically fool him into saying this wedding is not happening. And Barry Punch says, okay, well, we won't do it. If that's what you say, then I can't argue with that. It's equestrian law. And then they wait for him to leave, and then they swap out Pokey with Lyra, because he said that wedding... Yeah, he said that wedding was not going to happen. He didn't say anything about Lyra not marrying anyone.
And that's one of the things about how clever Vanna's writing is, that you don't realise how cleverly he's worded things until the punchline comes. And that's very, very hard to do. Yeah, History agrees with me.
Writing comedy is probably one of the hardest things to do, because it's comedy itself works much better as a visual medium. If you're trying to make somebody laugh through wordplay, and you're not the one delivering the words, well, then it can still fall flat on its face.
Yeah, that's one of the places that we have the upper hand on authors almost, because we can perform their fiction. As readers, we can give it a certain inflection or a certain intonation. When I was doing the narration for Whom the Princesses Would Destroy fairly recently, the prose in that is incredibly wordy, and because of that, it's very funny, but it can also be very dry, because you get great walls of text. So I was trying to bring out the comedy of it by giving certain inflections, by giving certain emphasis on certain words. Are you going to be very, very comfortable now? Are you going to move about again? She's grumbling. Suki is not a happy puppy because she was soaked through and she's now sitting in front of the heater.
Right.
So she agrees with me, yes. That we've kind of got a leg up on authors almost, because we can put that emphasis where it needs to go, whereas they can't. They have to hope that readers will understand where the funny parts are meant to be.
Yes.
And that's difficult. It's also for dramatic reading as well, like actual drama or sad fics or dark fics. It's very hard to know where the emphasis is in bare text, because Fimfiction as well does strip out a lot of the italicized text unless you're willing to go through and add it all in using HTML, which not all authors are.
Yeah, or there are some authors who try to circumvent this by going really crazy with adjectives, which is never a good idea.
Purple prose. We do not need purple prose. Link in the Dooblydoo for what purple prose is, because I've described this is the third time I've brought this up in something, and I fucking hate purple prose. Really.
Well, it's a topic that is a real big problem when it comes to fan fiction in general.
Yeah, it's sometimes called lavender unicorn syndrome, and it is the process by which you start taking out characters' names and replacing them with descriptions of physicality that are not necessary. We know who these characters are. We don't need to know that the lavender unicorn was speaking. We know it's Twilight Sparkle. The cream mare with her bi-coloured mane. We know that's Bonbon. It just sounds unnatural. And like you said, that some authors try to compensate for the lack of emphasis by being as wordy as possible, which has its own set of problems. So what's your... I will not bite you, I will not flame you, I will not hurt you, and I won't bomb your island. What do you think of purple prose?
Purple prose is something that I could do without, honestly.
Because I like how you sound like you're really carefully choosing your words.
I'm not sure how to describe my feelings on it, really, because I indulge in it from time to time more as a stylistic choice than anything else, because it can work if you use it correctly, but it's very rarely ever done. There are very few situations where you can use purple prose in a way to sort of paint the picture properly.
I think turn of the century fiction, if you look back at like Victorians and Romantics and early Gothic fiction, there's a lot of purple prose there, and it works because of the time period. But when you think in terms of a modern author writing for a modern audience in something like fanfiction, it's not always warranted. And
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at something like The Lord of the Rings, which was, by and large, a contemporary novel. It was written in the,
70s.
1970s, yes.
It was only written about 20 miles from my house. I drive past some of the landmarks it's based on. It's very odd.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, it was not written to be a contemporary novel. It was written in the style that was more adhered to the style of the Icelandic sagas or the Norse Norse sagas, basically, because that's what Tolkien knew. That was what he studied.
Yep. And for that reason, it works, because that's a particular stylistic choice that he was trying to emulate for a reason. The problem with Lavender Unicorn Syndrome is that it doesn't have that. It's adding these in for the sake of adding them in. If anybody ever describes eyes as orbs, I will fucking find them and fucking kill them.
Ditto for pools.
Oh god, yeah, pools. Eyes, while they are liquid, if they are pools, you are bleeding. And if they are orbs, they are no longer in your skull. Because if you can tell an eyeball is an orb, it's not inside its socket.
Seriously.
Yeah. I remember once reading that, what was this? It was like Law and Order SVU. One and only time I ever read a fanfic from there, just for fun. And one of the characters has brown eyes. And I bailed because this fanfiction described it as her chocolate orbs travelled across the room to meet his. What? What? Did she just, take out her eyeball, slather it in Bourneville, and throw it across the office? What? Because
I love that image. I love that image so much.
That's the problem, that when you have Purple Prose or Lavender Unicorn Syndrome, it unfortunately can change the meaning of what you are trying to say. Yeah. See, Sookie's agreeing with me again. She's
seriously.
groaning.
She wants to be involved.
She really does. You've got your own very stringent attitudes on fanfiction, haven't you? Which is, I sit and listen to you enough times when you're reading it into that bloody microphone. But thankfully, Vanna doesn't have that. We don't have Lavender Unicorn Syndrome in this fic, and because of that, it trips along merrily at a nice little pace.
What Vanna does have that I really, really like is a lot of early quirks that Lyra Bond fics sort of adopted very early on and sort of became staples as time went on for the couple. You have Lyra being a bit more eccentric or sitting weird, having an interest in anthropology, which is where anthropology basically came from. And you have Bon Bon, who is almost always portrayed as the more down-to-earth, the more straight mare compared to Lyra.
There is some irony to saying that she is the straight mare.
Yes, this is true. Yes.
But yeah, you're right, she's the sensible one. That in this one she is concerned with her business. She worries more about money than Lyra seems to. Mm-hmm. And that actually becomes a plot point that Bon Bon thinks Lyra is not taking money seriously enough for their wedding.
Yeah, considering that Lyra, as I've said, she's portrayed as having minor nobility status. She's probably never really been in a situation where she had to worry about money too much.
Yeah. Admit that even though she's portrayed as a noble, Vanna does eschew a lot of the stereotypes and the not-so-great tropes about writing about nobility in fiction, which is, I was fully expecting that when her parents turned up, they would be totally 100% against her marrying Bon Bon because Bon Bon is a commoner. And
yeah, it was a great red herring, that scene, too.
It was, and I appreciated that he didn't go with the stereotype, and that was around about the point that I realised this fic was something special. Because the first chapter of this is just over 7,000 words long, and it doesn't feel like it when you're reading it or when you're listening to it. None of the chapters feel as long as they actually are, because they're so well written.
It feels that way when you're editing it, I can tell you that much.
Oh, I know that feeling. When you look at the counter and you realise, I've only got 2 minutes of audio. I've been here for 3 fucking hours.
But when you look at the way that Lyra is portrayed in this fic as well, and this is brought up as a plot point in the penultimate chapter, the way that Lyra's nobility is portrayed in this is much more subtle, and Pokey calls her out on it. The fact that she doesn't act really high and mighty, but she does take advantage of Bon Bon's goodwill towards her at times. Like, not doing as much for Bonbon as Bonbon does for her.
Yeah, I like that kind of characterization, that it's multifaceted and layered. And you don't get that in a lot of fiction, especially the early part of the fandom, because you didn't need to. The characters were not drawn with enough nuances yet.
Yeah, the characters in the show, they were more three-dimensional than you would expect for a kid's show, but they still, their personalities were very loud, and they telegraphed their main traits very, very hard, very, very well.
Yeah, this was late season 1, early season 2 characterization for canon when this fic was written. And the early episodes, if you go back and you rewatch them, they are very, very simplistic. And to be honest, they have a lot of writing problems. Things like being too formulaic. Things like things happening in a certain order that's very predictable, like Ticketmaster. You knew all of Twilight's friends were going to want that ticket, even the ones that, based on their characterization, shouldn't have wanted the ticket. Or in the opening episodes, where she just happens to have met all the most appropriate ponies to represent the elements of harmony.
And then in the second part, each of those ponies demonstrates their element of harmony when facing an obstacle that was put there by Nightmare Moon.
It's very convenient.
Yes.
And that convenient storytelling, the early show is not as nuanced as the later show has become. Because the later show is, by dint of having to build on its own canon, it is more nuanced, it's more faceted. But this fic was doing that with the background characters at the start. So it did give extra layers to, say, Pinkie Pie. It did give some extra layers and some extra depth to Rarity. It also gave layers to characters who were barely background names. They were just puppets. Yeah, see?
Yep, and then we hit episode 100, where Secret Agent Sweetie Drops happens.
Yes, that's an odd one, because since 2012 I've actually had a fic half written called Bon Bon the Demon Slayer.
You were ahead of your time.
I was, but I missed my window to actually release it and say I was ahead of my time.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But I like how they, in the actual episode, they sort of flipped their roles a little bit by giving Bon Bon more of the eccentricities than Lyra had. I mean, Lyra still had her thing, like, sitting weird, like when she had her legs crossed at the wedding. And I'm sitting there going, I'm pretty sure that Pony Anatomy doesn't let that happen.
Yeah.
It looks really weird seeing Lyra sit there with her legs crossed.
And she does actually mention that. She says, the picnics we've had, the laughter we've shared, the benches we've sat on.
Yes, that was a great line.
You're just not comfortable at all this evening, are you? But yeah, I must admit, the flipped personality thing, because I like their fandom personality so much, of Bon Bon being the sensible one, the dry one, the sarcastic one, and Lyra being the slightly goofier, more eccentric one, it did strike me as odd that they were flipped around that way. And also their voices. I said this before in the How to Be a Fandom VA.
They sound too similar.
They did.
Honestly.
Yeah. I'm used to Bon Bon being characterised as either having that high-pitched, nasally New York-Boston thing that she had in Lesson Zero, or being deep-voiced, because Lyra was always going to have a higher-pitched voice, because a lot of the actresses, their range is in the higher pitches, so it made more sense for that. But to me, Lyra was always going to be higher-pitched, and Bon Bon should be in a lower pitch.
I like hearing Lyra as having a little bit of a rasp to her voice, too.
Yes.
Like, not as deep a rasp as Rainbow Dash does, but just a slight rasp to her voice.
I think they would have made her distinct, because not many of the cast have a raspy voice. They're all very clear, and unfortunately, because there were so many voices that they had to pull off in episode 100, they did start to bleed together. And unfortunately,
and they kept giving multiple roles to the same voice actor too.
Tabitha St. Germain.
Tabitha St. Germain, Lee Tokar, who was both Stephen Magnet and the Thoughts of Gummy.
Yeah, although he did manage to sound very distinct.
Yeah.
Then again, if you've only got two characters to do, and one of them is Stephen Magnet, who sounds like nobody.
Right, now there's a discussion about gay characters that we could get into.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Oh, man.
Hasbro, what are you doing?
Mixed messages here.
Yeah. Well, we're allowed to see a gay character in a cartoon as long as they're the comic relief? For shame.
Oh, he's not gay, he's a sea monster.
Yeah, we're gonna leave that one alone.
Yes, we are.
Considering half the dialogue I wrote for him for Heroic Tale, we're definitely leaving that one alone. But, yes, voice actors and things. So Amethyst Star, couldn't tell you what her voice was like at all.
No, that was very, very generic.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Because, well...
It's a shame, too, because a lot of these characters were played by the main 6 voice actresses, so you know that they have fantastic range.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But they just... I don't know if this was a casting director decision, or a vocal director decision, or something else entirely, but there were hits, and there were misses.
Yes.
Derpy's voice, a hit. Doctor's voice, a hit. Amethyst Star's voice, a miss.
Octavia's voice,
a hit.
Octavia's a hit only by virtue of the fact that she had an accent.
She did. And she sounded... I like the pitch of her voice. I've never thought that Octavia should have a higher pitched voice.
I know that this is getting off topic, but I'm really, really curious what your thoughts are on Vinyl not talking.
I think that was out of necessity because the fandom would have gone batshit.
Same, yeah. Like, I mean, this is a fandom that still argues about the color of her eyes. So, I'm curious about how many fics we're going to get where she's mute now, honestly.
Well, it's odd because Short Skirts and Explosions wrote one years ago, which was about Octavia being mute. And that was one about her trying to move a couch across town.
Mm-hmm.
So, Vinyl being mute, I think it's an interesting decision. I suspect that it has been made out of necessity because they don't want another Derpygate. But I think that they've opened up a lot of possibilities by making her mute. I think it would be very interesting to have a mute character.
They've opened up a lot of possibilities in general with some of the characterization that they've given. Like, for example, going back to Bon Bon being a monster hunter, the fact that she is a monster hunter and that is in her past, that is retroactively a part of the character now, that opened up a whole slew of possibilities that were immediately starting to be exploited after the episode aired. I started seeing fan comics about her, like, starting a Torchwood organization.
Yeah, I've seen so much stuff to do with that. And it's made Bon Bon way more popular than she was before, because it tended to be that Lyra was the fandom's darling because she was the eccentric one, the goofy one, the funny one they could do funny and silly things with.
And Bon Bon just existed, basically got her popularity from being paired with Lyra.
Yeah, she was the one that Lyra had to play off of, like you said, she was the straight mare. Now, not so much. Did you just shock yourself by shutting the door on your own tail? Come here. Come here. Suki, come here. One tick. Come on, I can't reach you. Right. Ear scratches. Okay? She shocked herself awake.
Oh. I do have to wonder, what sort of relationship they would have now if the fandom writers tried to combine Lyra's pre-established fandom eccentricities with Bon Bon's new canon eccentricity of being a former monster slayer.
I think that's probably already been done and appeared in the feature box on Fimfiction Tour, and will continue to do so.
If it has appeared, I haven't seen it because it was probably buried under pounds of porn.
Interesting alliteration there.
We can't go through one episode without mentioning how terrible the feature box is, can we?
Because it is! Because it's rubbish.
Yes.
See? You've made Suki faint. But yeah, seriously, it's shit.
Yeah,
you have to leave. I have to leave the adult filter on because I like Gorefics and I like Grimdarks. Instead all I get is porn all the time.
Yeah.
No. But yes, I think there were some interesting decisions in Slice of Life, and I'd be interested to know where the fandom goes with their depictions of these characters from here.
Yeah. I do know that overall, from what I could see, the episode was very, very popular when it first came out.
Yeah, it seemed to split people, I found, because I don't watch a lot of analysis videos, but I do read a lot of blogs on Fimfiction, and it was very, very divisive. So Dr. Wolf loved it. What? Don't you look at me like that. So Dr. Wolf loved it, Josh Scorcher loved it. Stop it.
Excuse me.
Come here. Heroic Review did not love it, and I keep getting angry emails about that.
I loved it!
I know, but you were one small dissenting voice. I was really surprised when I got that sound file to add to the video, because I'm going to let her out.
Right, okay.
I don't know what she thinks she's going to find in the other room, because I'm the only other one in the house. She's gone to a bowl. She has gone to her food bowl. Does she really think that there's going to be anything in it when I'm in here? Oh, she's having a drink. That's right. I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. Heroic Review hated it, and Present Perfect wrote what I thought was a joke blog about it to begin with, but he absolutely hates Slice of Life.
That's actually kind of what brought this podcast on, because he recently, well, not super recently, but recently did a review.
Recently at time of recording.
Yeah. He recently did a review of Happily Ever After, and he said, hey, look, it's the story I wanted Slice of Life to be. And that's sort of what brought this whole discussion on.
Present Perfect seems to inspire quite a few of these podcasts, because he inspired us to do the Lost and Found one with Thornquill. Present Perfect, continue to be the irascible, opinionated person you are, because you're giving us material.
Yes.
Although you may have done something more since between recording and actual publication of this.
I will say that, my opinion of the episode has not changed. But I will say that I do understand why some people do not like the episode, because if you look at the episode objectively, like you would any other episode of the show, it doesn't measure up. I mean, the plot and the pacing are all over the place. There's not really a very structured narrative in there. But the thing about it is, the episode to me is just pure, unbridled, unsaturated fun, and a huge love letter to the fandom that has been building up since 2011.
Yeah, it's not a good pony episode, but it is a good brony episode.
Yes.
And with that, I am going to have to go and deal with the dog.
Okay. I'll wait.
What is it?
So, since this is still recording, I'm guessing you guys can still hear me. Hi everybody, how you doing? I feel like I'm doing a solo Let's Play right now. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Well, I guess, what do you think the future will hold for Lyra and Bonbon in the show? Because I don't think that they're going to reach huge levels of prominence, obviously, at least not for a very, very long time. But I would like to think the fact that DHX has now established them as actual characters could potentially lead to something down the line.
I think that they will remain background characters and sometimes just appear in scenes together, or have little bits like in Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep, where they dreamed of being cat dog. That was creepy.
They were so happy about it too.
That was so creepy. You don't become happy that you are suddenly a gestalt being with your best friend and you have no butthole between you. Just two stomachs and two mouths and no way of getting rid of anything. That's a nightmare fuel, not a dream.
Oh, God.
But yes, I think that they will kind of carry on as they've been now, but now they'll have names and sometimes they'll be shown being friends.
Mm-hmm. With benefits.
I don't think the benefits are going to be shown. I think it's going to
Well,
be like
probably
Lyra-
not, no, but I'm going to keep adding that to the end.
I think it'll be like Octavia and Final Scratch. They're established roommates, but that bisecting line down the middle of their house, according to that, they are not a couple. Stupid!
That's not going to stop the shippers. I mean, do you know how many odd couple style that's basically the entire appeal of their pairing is, like, they're the odd couple.
And that's kind of how the Lyra Bond early characterizations, like in Happily Ever After, has worked. You have the eccentric and the straight mare.
Mm-hmm.
And we've come full circle. So, this has been talking about Happily Ever After and Slice of Life. Thank you very much for joining me today, Goombasa.
Thank you, it's always a joy to be on this show.
Be lovely to each other, and good night, everybody.
Bye!
Bye! Et voilà, we are done.